Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is our newest iteration of series with GrowthLab. And this session is focusing on, sorry, I lost the link and now I feel very silly. What now? Small business planning in 2021. We do have Korey and Dan from GrowthLab here to share with us. And this session is going to be very conversational. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Share what's going on in your world and see if you can stump our experts here living in paradise over there at GrowthLab.
Far from experts, because you can ask the same question to 3 different people, you're going to get 3 different answers. So what's on people's minds today? Yeah, you can't avoid it. It's definitely the election, right? That has created a lot of uncertainty in addition to all of the uncertainty that we've experienced in 2020. But yes, number one, it's the election. Number two, it is stimulus. Is there another round of stimulus? And then 3, it's COVID, but COVID wave 2. Wave 2, the second wave. You know, those three things are really top of mind for small businesses. Whether you're a startup trying to get stretch your cash burn or your cash runway and trying to raise another round, or you're that small medium-sized business, regardless of what you did with prior stimulus. So, you know, where do we like to? So, when we talk about planning for 2021. The gorilla in the room is still cash flow, right? It's still liquidity. But now that we're starting to see other things creeping up, right? You have this, so many companies have been able to get by with the liquidity, the cash that was doled out over the summer. And obviously, even here in Rhode Island, in other local jurisdictions, you're seeing CARES money that was appropriated at the state to the state level, and the state is then now allocating those monies to good causes, different grants, et cetera. But we're also starting to see other things creep up because in any sort of economic background, when government pumps cash, pumps liquidity into the markets, you're going to see an increase in demand for some things. You're going to see even potential pricing inflation. I mean, the last time anyone's probably tried to go to Home Depot and buy some 2x4s or a refrigerator or even a little rinky-dink microwave, you're waiting 6 months for this stuff. Or the prices have actually doubled on plywood and 2x4s and pressure treated. So all of that stuff is starting to trickle in, right? So we're focusing a lot more on 2021 around supply chain. We're also taking a look at the banking relationship. We're starting to have those conversations with the banks, whether it's taking some of that upside in capital that small businesses have been able to put aside and paying down some loans or renegotiating some loans now that you have a little bit of equity cushion. I don't know, what would be the third thing that would kind of top of mind? I would probably think about the customer, right? Where is the customer in all this with stimulus sort of drying up?
Yeah, I think the theme that you'll hear us talking about, and we've tried to preach it the past 6 months, is like planning, right? So that now is no different. But the problem right now, though, is that there's a lot more uncertainty, right? So we're building up a lot more uncertainty through the election, through second round of COVID, through second stimulus, right? So like there is so many unknowns that we don't know what's going to happen.
But if you look at the stock market is somehow like just putting aside the uncertainty, and asset prices continue to increase. However, not to weigh in too much on the stock market, there is a dichotomy, right? Just like we were talking Main Street, Wall Street, now we're seeing Tech Street versus everybody else on Wall Street. So the big question is, in 2021, how does the recovery begin to pull in others outside of just the tech sector? So that is kind of the backdrop for us, right? It's the election, it's second round of stimulus, if our politicians can get it together. And the third piece is the impact on that second wave. I don't take this very lightly, but I gotta tell you, if there's a second wave of COVID, which translates into more economic shutdown, granted, no one really believes it's going to be prolonged, but who knows? Who knows? If that all happens without the backdrop of a stimulus package,
They have to go hand in hand.
that small business owner is not going to come back, because I'm not sure anybody wants to go back on that journey back in May, right? I think you're going to see a lot more people just kind of throw their hands up.
And I'll add another level of detail onto that I've been thinking about is it really depends how that is structured at the same time. We've seen a lot of businesses lever up over the past 6 months, say the EIDL, right? That's 150,000, granted, great terms, but that's debt. That's true debt you have to pay back. If this second round of stimulus is more debt, that creates some complications for small business owners that maybe just don't want more debt.
And to add another layer of complexity to that is, if you do have all that debt, this second round of shutdowns does happen, stimulus doesn't follow it. A lot of that debt is personally guaranteed in the world of small businesses. You can't just close your doors and wipe your hands clean. The conversation I had this morning with a really good customer, we've been together for 4 years out in Sacramento, California. I said to him, you can either go hire a lawyer, or you can just begin to start having these proactive conversations with bankers, because it just doesn't go away, whether it's your lease, whether it's PPP and EIDL money, or a line of credit, or a term loan, or even those pesky credit cards. Like, that stuff doesn't go away. So I believe that if small businesses are starting to think like, hey, I've had enough, you got to start planning now. You don't have to you don't have to have a crystal ball, but you do have to have a view. And for better or for worse, I think my view is take the more conservative approach. Guys, and to boot, like, there is still so much uncertainty around the tax. Like, what are the tax implications of these PPP loan forgivenesses? I have customers who have already filed taxes last year because they happen to be on a fiscal versus a calendar, and the PPP money came in technically last tax season. They already filed their taxes, but yet what's happening? So you got to kind of
somewhat unknown. And so let's kind of transition. We've had a lot of customers talking to us, or a lot of people in the markets. They've recently reopened, right? They've gotten through the summer months of COVID, and they're beginning to reopen their business, right? What does that look like? But what does that look like if they have to go through another shutdown? Like, what are some things that these businesses should be thinking about in preparation for another potential shutdown?
Well, the first thing is extract yourself from CNN and Fox and focus back on the business. Like, regardless of who ends up in office, that is out of your control.
Yep.
So it's refocus back on the business. I just sent out a note to everybody. I said, shake off the election hangover. Like, you got to move on. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's already set in stone, but it just happens to be sometime in the future. So that's my first piece of advice. Move on. Take a view on those three things.
Yep. I think another thing that comes into here in the lens of planning is more specifically contingency planning, right? We don't know what's going to happen between the election, between all these different themes we're talking about. So something that we can do is kind of begin to think about what contingencies are in place, right? Whether it's another shutdown, or whether it's a second round of COVID, no more money. What are you going to do, right? Come up with that contingency plan where if you do need to shut down, what are the steps that you're going to take? It's going to be these people that I'm going to lay off. It's going to be this overhead that I'm going to cut back on, right? What are those specific actionable steps to prepare yourself?
And I would add one more thing to that. For the average small business owner, you have to commingle your business planning with your personal planning. Because if you are that business,
cash planning,
debt planning, it all has to start to come together. The average small business, when they borrow money, there are personal guarantees. The average small business owner only has one job. It's that small business. The average 90% of the net worth of many small business owners are in that company. And I got to tell you, if your mindset is, I may not make it the second time around, now more than ever, don't wait until there's a mandatory shutdown. Begin to plan today.
Yeah.
and hope to God that if there is any stimulus coming out, you don't spend it like you did on the PPP money. I get the very altruistic approach to the PPP money and where it was spent. I was never a fan of it. I always said, yes, it was there for your employees, but at the end of the day, it's still the company's debt, and you got to manage it accordingly. If there's stimulus money coming, don't spend it like you did in version 1.
Yeah.
So
We in some of this planning, we'll kind of approach it in a lot of different ways. But what we've been doing recently is, base case, best case, worst case, right? Can you talk a little bit about what like those 3 different scenarios are, why we use them, and kind of why
Sure.
that plays into this?
So I think this time around, I would be looking at worst case. We know what the potential implications are of a shutdown. We understand now there is gridlock. Regardless of who's president, chances are you're not going to have the Congress and the president all under one umbrella. There is going to be continued gridlock. This country is divided. 1 out of 2. Your neighbor, 2. 1 out of 2 voted one way or the other. There's gridlock. I would be looking at this as worst case scenario. If the second wave of COVID is as impactful as it was the first time around, and probably worse because now it's like really winter time, and our politicians and our government have to make those very difficult decisions. And if DC cannot get it together, I think there's only really one scenario. So with all that said, I know we've kind of run through a little bit of our thoughts here, and I could go on all day on my little tangent here, but I know there's a couple people in the audience. Would love to hear from you and how this is impacting you personally or your business. I see a chat. I don't know if
I just dropped in the chat that if anybody can't unmute and they want to put their question in the chat, I will gladly read it out. So that's what the chat is right now, because I know you guys can't really see it as easily.
Right.
But I do have a question about kind of thinking about the holiday season and knowing that, for a lot of small retailers, that's when they take on a lot of debt, like September through October, and then they try to sell everything in November, December. What are you hearing from that kind of industry? Are they, we're also pairing that with lots of campaigns to shop local. So what are these local businesses thinking and doing, and what do you recommend they do?
So it's usually over midsummer through I would say midsummer to September that you are placing those purchase orders. You are quote unquote building up stock, whether or not it's actually in your building yet. I think there's a double whammy, unfortunately, for these small retailers. One, it is a supply chain. Lead times are longer. Pricing is going up. And then on the flip side of the equation, your customer, you don't know if your customer is actually going to be there. That's like the perfect storm. Usually you're dealing with one or the other. We could sit here and say, well, we should try to figure out how to get, an e-commerce site. Well, putting up an e-commerce site doesn't just bring customers in. It takes years of SEO. It takes years of content creation. Never mind the know-how. Shopify is great. It's as dummied down of an e-commerce site as you can or application that you can get, but it still requires a certain level of capability. My advice to retailers is take the conservative view, keep a lean stock, don't overextend yourself on inventory and taking on debt to buy new inventory, and do whatever you can to bring people in the door.
I think we've been seeing people order less, retailers order less, but also have a second lens on what inventory they are purchasing.
Yeah.
Inventory that may be able to trickle into the Christmas season or
rationalize the SKUs is a big one. So Becky, I think you have a question.
Oh, hey. I just jumped in kind of on a whim. I had a little bit of extra time. So thanks for putting this together, everyone. I'm Becky. My husband and I run the Break Hotel in Narragansett. And also we run a real estate company in Narragansett. So I just figured I'd see what was happening over here. Yeah, we're just thinking as far as the hotel is going, we're thinking that we need to just shut it down, once our business starts to trickle down in the off season, which being located in Narragansett, we tend not to be that busy in the winter, but I really am not sure who you guys are. I do apologize that I'm not sure who Growth Lab is. And I heard you guys referring to Brave Rivers and Vertical 6, and I just don't know who any of you are, and so I missed the very beginning, probably the introductions.
So we're a finance as a service company. We work with startups and small, medium-sized businesses across the country with their accounting, finance, business strategy, and tax.
Okay, thanks.
So kind of talking a little bit of financial planning. Becky, I wouldn't disagree with you. I would either completely mothball the hotel for 6 months, or I would be pulling back on a very limited basis, picking and choosing the weeks that you feel you could get enough capacity to actually break even to be open. That's kind of my 2 cents. And frankly, if you do have senior debt from banks, mortgages, I would be having very open conversations with your bankers, telling them, what is the intent and how you're looking to protect your franchise value, but you're also looking to ensure that you're not eating into your equity, right? Because remember, every time your P&L shows $1 loss, that comes off of your back. And I think now more than ever, you should be having those open and transparent conversations with your bankers.
Yeah, thanks for that input. Yeah, this summer, actually, we're an independently owned, we built it ourselves, so we are not part of a franchise, but we are, we just own it.
I'm sorry, I said franchise value. I meant the value of your brand, not the.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood that. But we did make the decision not to open the restaurant this summer to outside people, which ended up being a really smart decision because it made the hotel guests feel very safe, and also the employees feel very safe, not having a lot of extra people in and out. And when we weighed what we would probably gain from dealing with all the social distancing and all the rigmarole that we were going to have to go through, we just decided that it was easier not to even deal with the restaurant, which ironically enough, the community, I think it's almost like improving our value brand because the community can't access us right now. So I feel like when it comes time to open back up to them, they're going to appreciate us even more. But so that was something that we decided to do. And I think, we just have to tighten the reins as much as possible. But I feel bad for restaurants that don't have any type of fallback. I mean, that this isn't our only business, but people where it's their only business, I don't know how they're going to make it through. It's kind of scary for me, but the hospitality business is not in a good spot, I don't think, for the winter coming up.
So one thing to think about is if you're going to be on limited operations or even pull back 100% on the lodging side of your hospitality business, it could be opening up the restaurant for locals while the lodging is closed. Something to think about.
Yeah, that actually isn't a bad idea. Yeah, that is something to think about. Thanks for that suggestion. Yeah, because one thing we've noticed is that what we have done is a few very exclusive small parties. So we'll be doing small private events only, which that seems to be a safe route. And so we've kind of been that exclusive go-to for for certain things like that. So that might be a way to go for the winter. So that's that. So anyway, thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Great information, great suggestions. And Toonie, I love these innovation workshops.